We have research that shows us that supportive educators, so educators who are supportive of LGBTQ students, especially specifically in one national study of students of color, that reports that students then have higher self-esteem and lower levels of depression, right? So we can actually center in the joy and humanity and love of students to be able to create better conditions for them to succeed academically and to be their fullest selves, their most authentic selves at school every day. I think that it's really important to just kind of like lay the landscape for where we are right now. It has been a very, very difficult year for LGBTQ2SIA plus youth and communities all across the country, certainly more, intense in some states that are actively passing laws that ban, youth from accessing sports and, to use the restrooms that are most affirming to them. But right here in Oregon, right, we have a lot of hostility happening in our communities that is really difficult to navigate. If you are an educator or a family member or a student yourself, whether or not you identify, the tension and the conflict that is caused, the harm that causes everyone in a community has just been so palpable in the role that I have in speaking to so many people, so many youth and community members, as well as just people trying to get through the day, having these really hard stories and scenarios come up that they have to really support. It also really matters to meet students where they are, because we have 8% of Oregon youth are transgender, unsure, or gender expansive, according to our student health survey data, which is taken by 6th, 8th, and 11th grade students. We have about 1 in 3 Oregon youth who identify as LGBT plus, other, or unsure as a sexual orientation. So, that's again, that same Oregon data, local data. So it's a lot of students, and some students are feeling unsafe. So some of the things they experience are increased bullying, increased, suicide ideation. We have students who are 3 times, LGBTQ2SIA students are 3 times as likely to miss school due to fear. So those fear-based absences. And then we also have the connection with sexual assault, which is that LGBTQ students are 2 to 3 times as likely to experience sexual assault. All of that data is local Oregon data. That is right here in Oregon, despite the very strong protective laws we have for things like using restrooms, the court cases we can lean on for making sure that we have access to the athletics and curriculum that we want to see, these requirements, these beautiful things that we can really help folks to lean on, is still not necessarily preventing the harm that we know is happening. And some of the things that just examples are, classrooms and like the kind of gender expansive and educators and administrators and students who are being targeted through field trip kind of scenarios, school board meetings, online, of course, certainly during local elections, at community events, at public libraries, lots of book bans happening. Help support the LGBTQ2SIA plus student success program. We have 3 parts to this program. One of them is the plan. The tenets of the plan are really to charge schools with their, to clarify their responsibility, and then to kind of understand the best practices, affirming strategies that are possible to prevent harm from happening in schools, and to better support the academic success and just general well-being of LGBTQ2SIA students by following Oregon laws and policies. Some of the areas that are included in that plan are supporting educators and school staff to interrupt harassment and affirm students in the classroom, really understanding what their requirements are in terms of creating non-discriminatory environments, and then what they can do if they don't feel supported as a staff member themselves. The second piece of the plan is creating safer learning spaces for students to thrive, which includes things like gender affirming facilities, so restrooms, as well as, athletics and locker rooms and, physical education courses, just anywhere really that is a physical space where learning can happen, can obviously be an affirming or a not affirming space for that to happen. This also includes mental health services. So we get into the kind of connection with gender affirming healthcare that happens, not because many school-based health centers or other places are really having the care happening necessarily, but because it's such an important resource to be able to connect students to so they can stay engaged in schools. If that is a barrier, if they're feeling, not safe or not affirmed, then that is going to be a success, a barrier to success for their academics during the school day. And then the last part of that is inclusive curriculum, which of course sex ed is one of the clearest requirements that folks have to have, really LGBTQ2SIA inclusive sex ed, and health education more broadly. And then the third piece is engaging with families and communities. Supportive families is such a protective factor against some of the negative mental health outcomes we know happen. The Trevor Project national data, the Youth Mental Health Survey from 2022, shows that LGBTQ youth who live in a community that is accepting of LGBTQ people reported significantly lower rates of attempting suicide compared to those who did not. So these moments, these interactions we have with young people, if we're a parent, if we're an educator, if we're an administrator, if we're another student who has a peer coming to us, those really matter, right? Our biases that come up, our reactions, our, the things we're regurgitating that we're seeing in media, that we're seeing in the news or in social media or in TV shows, all of that really matters to care for one another in community. It's a really, really important part of the larger landscape of violence prevention, just because of how much direct violence we're seeing in our world. The goal is to kind of demonstrate to schools the requirements they already have and to make sure that students understand the rights they have to request access to, curriculum that's inclusive, to restrooms that are affirming, to sports teams that they need to be in for their safety, to be able to have access to the physical spaces, as well as just the experiences that they want to be able to have joyful school days that aren't going to be filled with bullying and violence and some of these other kind of negative outcomes. There's such potential for joy in this work, and so I just have to end by saying, students are so resilient, our communities are so resilient. Oregon as a state has a beautiful history of resilience and resistance, and we are seeing some really hard things happening across the country and across the state, and folks are showing up with love and care for one another.